So today we are going to discuss Tucker Carlson. And for those who don't know, Tucker Carlson is, he's arguably, I think he is the most watched political commentator in American news. He gets millions of viewers. He's especially popular amongst younger conservatives, younger people on the so-called right wing in America. And Tucker Carlson is presented as this alternative to the left. A lot of people love Tucker Carlson because he calls out the left, because he stands up to the left, because he owns the libs, you guys. And I'm not a fan of Tucker Carlson. And I would go as far as saying that I think Tucker Carlson is arguably the worst person in American news, because Tucker Carlson, while he's presented as an alternative to the left, he has a left-wing view of economics. And for those who have been paying attention, you would know that for years, Tucker Carlson, he's exhibited this enormous, raging hate boner for Jeff Bezos, the founder of Amazon. As you can see right here, this is from Fox News, the channel Fox News, and this is from September 7th, 2018. So this is from almost 2 years ago. It's always Amazon's a big monopoly this, Jeff Bezos is the richest man in the world that, and he needs to take care of the less fortunate. That's what Tucker Carlson talks about. And let's check this out.
Drew, hold on,
a target.
That's I'll tell you why. Because he's the richest man in the world, and I believe that you have an obligation to, I don't know, your children, your employees, people who are dependent upon you. You have a moral obligation.
You have a moral obligation. Jeff Bezos, he's the richest man in the world, and he has a moral obligation to take care of the less fortunate. How does this sound any different from the rhetoric we hear from people like Bolshevik Bernie Sanders or Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez?
To make sure that you do something for them in exchange for what they do for you.
Why does he have a moral obligation, Tucker? Why does he have a moral obligation to pay them any more than they're worth to him in terms of productive ability?
Because the powerful have an obligation to take care of the less powerful.
The powerful have an obligation to take care of the less powerful. Now, I don't know if Tucker Carlson has held this view for years. He may have. He may have always had this view. But I found this convenient because, again, this is from September 7th, 2018. Just a few weeks prior to this, few months prior, Cornel West, the Democratic Socialist, I think he teaches at Harvard University, Princeton, maybe it's Princeton, Princeton's in the background. I think he's also taught or he went to Harvard. But as you can see, this is from July 6, 2018. And he brought Cornel West on to talk about the wonders of democratic socialism, which again is totally different from communism, apparently. But here's what Cornel West had to say when he was on Tucker Carlson.
Live lives of decency. So it's not an ism, no, brother. It's about decency. It's about fairness. It's about the accountability of the powerful vis-a-vis those who have less power. The workplace.
See? It's about accountability between the powerful and the less powerful.
Women dealing with the household, gays, lesbians, trans, black people, indigenous peoples, immigrants. How do we ensure that they are treated decently and that the powerful don't in any way manipulate, subjugate, and exploit them?
Well, I mean, if that's what democratic socialism is, then I'm basically on board.
Oh my goodness. Did you hear that, folks? If that's what democratic socialism is, if it's the government holding the powerful accountable and making sure that they take care of the less powerful, then if that's what democratic socialism is, then Tucker is basically on board. And this is your champion. This is your king. All of you Tucker Carlson fans out there that love this guy because he owns the left. He stands up to the left. Meanwhile, if we elect Cornel West as president, we hand him the car keys and say, here, go impose democratic socialism on America. Sounds like Tucker Carlson would be on board with that. And you can see he's echoing Cornel West's self-described Democratic Socialist, Cornel West. He's echoing his talking points when talking about Jeff Bezos.
I think that's fair to say.
And Amy Peikoff over here is asking why, which is a really good question. If you often ask people this question when it comes to things like socialism and forced wealth redistribution and sacrifice and altruism, if you just ask why, they don't have answers because they don't have answers.
Why?
Well, because I think that's inherent in our Christian code, our Judaic understanding.
Oh, it's because Jesus said so, folks. Because Jesus said so. I don't know about you guys, but I thought we had this thing in America called a separation of church and state, which says you don't get to use the government to impose your bullshit morality, your morality which says that the standard for good is dying on a cross for the sake of sinners and savages. So why not to impose this on Jeff Bezos? Let's sacrifice him and give all of his money to the less fortunate, to the less powerful. And this is not new, right? First off, this is a big reason why conservatives, the so-called defenders of capitalism, who I call the pretenders of capitalism in America, this is why they are total pussycats when it comes to standing up to the socialists. And this is not new. If you can see this right here, this is from history.house.gov. It's from July 11th, 1955. It talks about why "In God We Trust" is printed on our money. And it says right here, it's quoting a former House of Representatives. It says, Bennett proclaimed on the House floor, while the sentiment of trust in God is universal and timeless, these particular four words are indigenous to our country. Furthermore, Bennett invoked the Cold War struggle in arguing for the measure. Quote, in these days when imperialistic and materialistic communism seeks to attack and destroy freedom, we should continually look for ways to strengthen the foundations of freedom. He goes on to say, the nation's political and economic fortunes were tied to its spiritual faith. Now, I don't know about you guys. So basically, the Cold Warriors, the anti-communists during the Cold War, they had a problem on their hands. They wanted to stand up to the Soviet Union, the communist Soviet Union, and they wanted to show how amazing American freedom and capitalism was. Now, again, I don't know about you guys, but I would think maybe, just maybe we would think about freeing up the economy, maybe freeing up the banking industry and deregulating banking, privatizing banking, privatizing the creation and issuing of currency. Maybe, just maybe. But that would really show that, Soviet Union, huh? You guys think communism is so cool? You guys think Marx knew what was up? Well, we'll show you what's up. We're going to deregulate the fuck out of our economy. We're going to free everything up. And we're going to show the world how amazing freedom and capitalism really are. But instead, they just decided to keep the regulatory and welfare state and print, religious messages on our money. And, good job, you guys. I mean, I guess the United States still won the Cold War. Probably could have won it faster. I don't know. But, it just shows how cowardly, because the conservatives, they've went all in on Christianity to stand up to the left, to stand up to communism and socialism. They put all their chips on the Jesus basket, and then they wonder why they can't stand up to people who demand that they adhere to their own garbage morality.
Our religious perspective commands
there are plenty of people who do not share your Christian code.
Well, clearly he doesn't.
And here's Amy Peikoff. Yeah, not everyone shares your Christian code.
Based on faith, Tucker. So you're going to need to provide a secular argument for that moral duty.
I don't know.
It looks like Tucker's running out. Looks like he's running out of gas here. Well, why is it right, Tucker? So I started calling Tucker Carlson after noticing his left-wing approach to economics. I started referring to him as Tucker Karl Marxon. But I do want to clear some things up. I want to make one thing clear. Do I think that Tucker Carlson is a Marxist? No, I don't. This is what some people may call a joke. A joke that I think speaks to the fact that Tucker Carlson, again, has a left-wing approach to economics. And if you watch his show long enough, he speaks about politics in a form of class warfare. He speaks in terms of class struggle. I don't know if he ever read Communist Manifesto. I don't know if he's ever read Karl Marx, but he always speaks in Marxist terms, especially when it comes to this class warfare narrative that he likes to present. The way Tucker talks about politics in America is through the lens of the Republican Party since Trump took over. The Republicans and Trump, they represent the American middle class. They represent small-town America, rural America, the American farmer. They represent the forgotten American worker, either the former blue-collar union worker or would-be blue-collar union worker who's had their job shipped overseas the last 30 years or is in jeopardy of having their job shipped overseas. The Republicans, they represent the gun-loving, Jesus-loving, church-going Americans that they just want to raise a nuclear family and just have their 9-to-5, their comfortable 9-to-5. That's what Trump and the Republicans currently represent, is the forgotten American, American working man, American middle class. And opposing them, opposing Trump and the Republicans, are the Democrats, who Tucker often refers to as the elites. The Democrats, they're all from these big, rich, bourgeoisie cities. Cities like Los Angeles and New York and Washington and Chicago and Atlanta and Seattle and Portland and other cities, other big bourgeoisie cities. Silicon Valley, that's where all the big tech corporations like Apple and Google and Amazon are located. Microsoft, okay, they're not all located there, but big tech, they're all run by left-wingers. And all of those rich, virtue-signaling celebrities in Hollywood, they're all left-wingers. They're all left-wingers. The left, they're the elites. The right, the conservatives, they're the American, they're the middle class and the working class. And that's how Karl Marx viewed politics. That's how he viewed human history. Human history is just a battle, a constant battle between the haves and the have-nots. And under 19th century capitalism, it manifested itself in a battle between the bourgeoisie, which are the elites, the property owners, the factory owners, the capitalists, the corporations, the rich. That was the bourgeoisie. And then you had the proletariat, who were the industrial workers, the factory workers, the farmers. And that's where the battle was. Now, I don't think Tucker would ever go as extreme as saying that we need to overthrow all existing social conditions and abolish private property and all that goofy nonsense. But when you think about it, again, Tucker, he's pretty popular, especially amongst younger conservatives. Even younger politically active moderates, they like Tucker Carlson. And if they buy into this class warfare nonsense that he speaks in terms of, that he speaks to, I mean, who's to say that some of these high school-aged, college-aged young adults who are watching Tucker now yammer on about class warfare, who's to say that in 5 years that they won't turn to BreadTube? Turn to left-wing goofs like Kyle Kulinski, who says, yeah, Tucker, he was totally right when it came to class warfare. Now come to us, and we have the solution to it, which is the overthrow of all existing social conditions and the abolition of private property. Anyway, that's why I call Tucker Carlson Tucker Karl Marxon. He talked about this recently. This was June 25th. Check this out.
And that was telling. Then they claimed that capitalism was the enemy, but only certain kinds of capitalism. The mob burned independent businesses to the ground by the score. They didn't say a word about those businesses' digital competitors, Google and Apple and Amazon. All of those companies were funding the destruction.
So you hear that? You hear the package deal Tucker's making here? Now he's rightfully calling the rioters from the last few months, the rioters. They, many if not all of them, are rioting in the name of overthrowing capitalism, ending capitalism. They are anti-capitalist. But then he makes a package deal. He says, oh, well, they were burning down small businesses, but they said nothing about their digital competitors like Apple and Amazon and Google. And he's trying to make them sound like that they're all on the same team. The big, greedy tech corporations, Apple and Amazon, they're on the same side as the anti-capitalists. Except this ignores the fact that they did, in fact, loot Apple stores throughout the country. As we can see right here, in fact, Apple is taking it upon themselves to track down the stolen merchandise with serial numbers and whatever means they have available to them. It looks like that they're sending people, as you can see right here, Apple disabled the phones that were looted. And I don't know if you can see it, but it looks like the message that Apple's sent out, it asks the people who's in possession of it to please return to the Apple Walnut Street location. So does it sound like they're all on the same side? When they did, they didn't say anything about Apple. They looted the fuck out of multiple Apple stores, Tucker. So which is it? Is he just, I don't expect everyone in the media to be perfect. People make mistakes. People make errors. So is this just an honest mistake? Is it a whoopsie daisy? Or is Tucker bending some truths, knowingly bending some truths to paint his, the left, they're just the elites. They're just the corporations. They're in the pockets of the corporations like Apple. On top of that, so he also put Amazon in this discussion. Amazon. Oh, they said nothing about Amazon except for a few weeks after this, July 20th. People in Seattle went and looted an Amazon store. So what about this, Tucker, huh? Do you still think they're not saying anything about these digital competitors? Also, didn't in Washington, D.C., didn't someone put a guillotine outside of Jeff Bezos' house? Not to mention all the anti-Bezos rhetoric I've seen in signs and graffiti at and after these riots and peaceful protests. But according to Tucker, they never say anything about Apple or Amazon or Jeff Bezos. There was also an Amazon warehouse in Redlands, California, that got burnt around the same time, around the peak of the riots. Now, the jury is out on whether or not that was an arson, if that was an attack. Maybe it was just an accidental fire, so who knows? Either way, Tucker is either lying or he just does not have his facts straight, folks. And then we have this one. This is from June 5th of 2019, so this was a year ago. This is Tucker Carlson applauding Elizabeth Warren, goofy Elizabeth Warren's economic plan. And I don't know if you guys know who Elizabeth Warren is, but she was the darling of the American left before Bolshevik Bernie Sanders came along and stole all of her thunder. The left loved Elizabeth Warren before Bernie Sanders ran in 2016. She was like Captain Marvel to the left wing. But Tucker says some pretty revealing stuff here. Watch this.
That's exactly the problem, not just with Elizabeth Warren, but with American politics. In Washington, almost nobody speaks for the majority of voters. You're either a libertarian zealot controlled by the banks.
You're a libertarian zealot controlled by the banks. So what message does that send? Do libertarians, I mean, I'm not a libertarian, but do they have their own ideas? Are their ideas legitimate? Or are they all doing it because they're controlled by the banks?
Yammering on about entrepreneurship and how we need to cut entitlements.
Yeah, cutting entitlements, entrepreneurship. Ugh.
It's one side of the aisle.
That's one side. Who's opposing these alleged libertarians in Congress?
Or worse, you're some decadent trust fund socialist who wants to ban passenger cars and give Medicaid to illegal aliens.
You're a decadent trust fund socialist. So that's all in Congress right now. You're either a trust fund socialist or you're a libertarian controlled by the banks. Either way, what's the message we get from here? Both Democrats, Republicans, they're controlled by the elites, you guys. They're either a trust fund socialist or they're controlled by the banks.
That's the other side. What there isn't is a caucus that represents where most Americans actually are. Nationalist on economics, fairly traditional on the social issues.
Now, I might be nitpicking here, but he talks about how Congress is not representing the majority of Americans. And I see this sentiment a lot in American political discourse. People like to make a big fuss about how Congress has a low approval rating. It's always somewhere between like 5 and 15%. And I'm over here like, who cares? Congress was not designed to represent the majority of Americans. Congressional representatives, they are there to represent their constituents. So like Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, for better or worse, let's use her as an example. AOC represents New York's 14th district. AOC goes to the House of Representatives to represent the people who reside and vote in New York's 14th district. AOC is not there to represent the people of Idaho. She's not there to represent the people of Phoenix, Arizona. She's not there to represent anyone in Florida. She's not there to represent the majority of Americans. She's there to represent the constituents that voted her in the first place. So I don't know why it's a big deal that Congress doesn't represent the majority of Americans. You're not there to represent the majority. You're there to represent the constituents who voted you in. On top of that, when you consider the role of the Senate was specifically designed as a counter, as a balance to my populist will, my will of the majority. It was meant to give power to the less populous states. So especially when you consider the Senate, this talking point is pretty ridiculous.
Imagine a politician who wanted to make your health care cheaper but wasn't ghoulishly excited about partial birth abortion. Imagine someone who genuinely respected the nuclear family and sympathized with the culture of rural America, but at the same
rural America
time was willing to take your side against rapacious credit card companies bleeding you dry at 35%.
Not that I have anything against rural America. I don't.
Percent interest. Would you vote for someone like that?
No.
My gosh, of course you would.
Remember, he said nationalist on economics, so I say no. But he says, oh, of course you would. It's common sense, you guys.
Who wouldn't? That candidate would be elected in a landslide.
He might not be wrong here, by the way. It's very possible that someone in 2024, 2028, a goon like Josh Hawley, who I refer to as Missouri Mussolini. In fact, people have talked about Tucker possibly throwing his hat in the race. Maybe most Americans would embrace a politician, a president that is nationalist on economics and conservative on social issues. Might not be wrong. It's something to look at, something to consider, folks.
Every single time. And yet that candidate is the opposite of pretty much everyone currently serving in our Congress. Our leadership class remains resolutely libertarian, committed to the rhetoric of markets when it serves them, utterly libertine on questions of culture.
You hear that? Just full of libertarians who are so obsessed with markets. America is just this free market paradise with our Federal Reserve and our public education, Federal Department of Education, Medicare, Medicaid, Social Security, National Highway System, FCC, War on Drugs, FDA, DEA, antitrust laws, Department of Energy. It's just a free market paradise, folks. That's all they care about is markets.
Republicans will lecture you about how payday loan scams are a critical part of our market economy. Then they'll work to make it easier for your kids to smoke weed because, hey, freedom.
Yeah, Republicans, they just want to make it easier for your kids to smoke weed. Meanwhile, marijuana, cannabis, it's still illegal at the federal level. Meanwhile, our philosopher kings at the FDA, they're working hard to raise the tobacco age to 21 and outlaw flavored vapes because what about the children, folks? Yes, Tucker Carlson, there's just way too much freedom in the economy. I mean, isn't it astonishing how many people take this nationalist knucklehead seriously? But hey, maybe this is what Fox News viewers like these days. Maybe they all want less freedom and more talk about class warfare. That brings us to this segment, which was July 21st, just a few days ago. This one went big because it transitioned into Sean Hannity awkwardly contradicting what Tucker said, which led to a few days in the news cycle. But listen to what Tucker says.
The coronavirus shutdowns, whether they were necessary or not, have indisputably crushed huge parts of the American economy. Millions of Americans remain out of work. Many more are draining their savings once the government stops paying a huge portion of the population to stay at home. We don't know what will happen. But at least one person has become extremely rich, richer than any man in history, from all of this, including a lot of the suffering. That would be Amazon CEO, Democratic donor, owner of the Washington Post, Jeff Bezos.
Oh no, Jeff Bezos is getting rich, you guys. It's worth noting, how did Jeff Bezos get rich? How did he start on this path of becoming arguably the richest person in the world? He did it by starting a company that sells books. I don't know about you guys, but I grew up in the 90s. I was a 90s kid. And the adults of the 90s were so bent out of shape about kids not reading enough. There was all this hysteria about, oh, kids, they don't read anymore. They're playing too many video games. They're watching too much TV. Kids don't read books anymore. It was a big deal in the 90s, and it was so bad that the adults of the 90s tried to bribe us kids with pizza. They teamed up with Pizza Hut and other pizza restaurants. They had these programs called Book It, I think. Yeah, the Book It program. You get these buttons, and you get like star stickers on it and stuff. And then if you read enough books, you would get a free pizza party, or you get a free slice of pizza. Whichever class in your school read the most books would get a free pizza party at the end of the month or some shit. I don't remember the details. The point I'm trying to make here is that you would think with all this obsession during the 90s about kids not reading enough books, that someone like Jeff Bezos, he'd be viewed as a hero. Got more people to read, moved more books than anyone else in human history, I think. Made it easier for people to read. Got rich doing so, and this is the way people treat him. This is the way people talk about Jeff Bezos. Getting more people to read, making money as a result. I thought this was America, but you know what? All he did was he sold some books. Does anybody really need to read books?
Jeff Bezos, just yesterday, made $13 billion. Now, 20 years ago, if that had happened, if a captain of industry had made $13 billion in a single day while the country got...
Now, it's worth noting, I have to make this point a lot, but usually when I make this point, it is in response to brain-dead leftists, left-wing commentators, bread tubers. Like, the first time I ever talked about this was in response to a Jimmy Dore video. Jimmy Dore, who used to be with TYT, pretty big YouTube channel, pretty big left-winger, doesn't like Jeff Bezos. And I had to explain that this whole notion that Jeff Bezos made $13 billion in a day is such a dishonest way of framing it. His net worth increased by $13 billion, but as anyone with an honest, rational thinking brain knows, is that that's all because of the value of the stocks he owns in a company that he founded. So unless Jeff Bezos sold $13 billion worth of shares in a day, he didn't make $13 billion. His net worth increased by that much, but he didn't. It doesn't mean that he suddenly got $13 billion. And a lot of people view it that way. I've seen people say, oh, he took $13 billion out of circulation in the American economy. No, he didn't. Such a criminal misunderstanding of economics. All right.
$13 billion. Now, 20 years ago, if that had happened, if a captain of industry had made $13 billion in a single day while the country got poorer, the Democratic Party would have had something to say about it. Not anymore, because the people getting rich.
So, you hear that? The Democratic Party, they have no problem with Jeff Bezos and Amazon. All right, well, this conveniently ignores some facts, one of which is right here. I don't know if you guys remember this. This is from, it looks like 2017, 2018. September 5th, 2018. This is almost 2 years ago. This was a law proposed by Bolshevik Bernie Sanders called the Stop Bad Employers by Zeroing Out Subsidies Act. And if we abbreviate that, this was intentional. It's called the Stop Bezos Act. American politicians are literally naming laws after Jeff Bezos to target Jeff Bezos. And Tucker Carlson acts like Democrats don't say anything about Jeff Bezos making all this money. They say nothing about Jeff Bezos. Now, some of you at home might be saying or thinking, but Bernie Sanders, he's not technically a Democrat. He's not actually a Democrat. He's technically an independent, although he has run in the Democratic primary 2 presidential election cycles in a row. So I'll let you think about that. But this was co-sponsored by another Democrat in the House named Ro Khanna. All right, so we got Bernie Sanders and Ro Khanna. They don't like Jeff Bezos. They're naming laws after him that target Jeff Bezos. Then we have this. Let's bring this up. This is goofy Elizabeth Warren, who was excited about her wealth tax, saying, bragging about how Jeff Bezos would pay another $7 billion a year in her wonderful wealth tax. But again, Democrats, they never say anything about Jeff Bezos. Joe Biden right here. I guess this isn't Bezos, but Joe Biden says, I think Amazon should start paying their taxes. AOC is constantly going after Jeff Bezos. I can't even go a month on Twitter without a bunch of Democrat voting, brain-dead leftists bitching and moaning about how Jeff Bezos has too much money and how Amazon's this big, greedy monopoly. But according to Tucker Carlson, the #1 man in American news, Democrats never make an issue about Jeff Bezos. Get the fuck out of here.